Good morning, good evening, good afternoon to everyone on the call. My name is Charles McGregor. I'm one of the gurus over at saasguru and the creator of the Flows course that is available for free on the saasguru website. Tonight, we're going to concentrate going through record triggered flows. So these are flows for both creation and update of records within Salesforce. We will also have a look at some of the user interface around flows that we didn't go through in last week's session. So firstly, we'll start off with our slideshow here before we get into our product showcase. So firstly, for those of you unfamiliar with the saasguru platform or are new to saasguru and came across these webinars, welcome. saasguru is a learning platform that allows you to learn Salesforce. Just start again there. So saasguru is a learning platform that allows you to work through the topics within the Salesforce certifications and different courses at your own pace, with a tailored view of information as well as study guides, mock exams, and it's also gamified as well, so you can see how you're going against other people as well. We also have a Slack channel, which has multiple channels there available for you to ask questions, speak to different gurus in different areas, and also just understand how everyone is going through. Thank you. I did not share my screen, so there we go. That might make it easier for everyone. Apologies for that. Great. So essentially, saasguru sits in the middle. So you're learning via Trailhead and other means. It should be your first step, as well as working through the tools available within saasguru to bridge the gap between your trailheads and your certification, giving you practical experience and practical use cases for you to be able to go through and be successful, not only in getting your certification, but understanding how to apply those skills in a role. It's great to have certifications, but it's really important that you understand how those are applied. And that's what the hope of this course has been, and these particular webinars, is to better understand how flow actually works with its increased importance going forward within Salesforce with the retirement of workflows and process builders in the future. So through the community, we also have certification vouchers, product tips, and updates. We run more webinars and live classes like this. We have one earlier on today, and we have those going constantly through the week. So please get involved with those. We will be running them. They are free to join up, so please get involved. And also, as I said, the Slack community. So you can get support from a number of gurus all around the world who are more than willing to help. We'll provide the links within the chat for the Slack community and also the LinkedIn community as well. And now into our topic of the evening, record triggered flows. So a record triggered flow is an auto launch flow that is launched when a record is created, updated, or deleted. The auto launch flow runs in the background. Now, there are two different types of record triggered flows. You have a before save and an after save. Similar to within Apex, where you have a before update, an after update, or a before insert, and after insert. When the record triggered flow is created, there are the following details in which we need to input. Firstly, we have the object name. So the object API name, for example, if it's an account, it's account. If it was a custom object that I created named employment, it would be employment__C. We configure the trigger, so when it will be fired. So on create, on update, on creation and update, or on delete. And we can define entry conditions. So we can define what record actually enters into that flow. And then, yes, we have the fast field updates or actions and related records. The before save flows can only update the record in which it was fired off. To make updates to other records, we need to use an after save flow. Now, use cases for a fast field update or a before save flow is when you're making updates on a record that you want to happen before custom validation rules run. So in the order of execution, you have system validations. So, field lengths, correct format, those sorts of system validations. Then you have your before save flows that run, which is before your custom validation rules. So any validation rules that you determine within an object would run after the before save flow. So if you're wanting to ensure that certain fields have values, you can use a before save flow to populate those values to ensure that it actually meets the requirements, so it doesn't get picked up by your validation. Great. And now jump over into our product showcase. So we're going to look at two different flows tonight. The features that we're going to look at a high level are record triggered flows, flow actions, and custom notifications. Our use case is that ABC Logistics are finding their sales users aren't following the internal process for generating quotes and advising the opportunity owner when a quote is accepted. They're also wanting the opportunity to be moved to the negotiation review stage when a quote is accepted. So what we're going to take from this is jumping over into our org. If we think back to our flow last week, we created a very simple screen flow, which created our opportunities, created our opportunity products, and created our quotes. Now, on top of that, what we want to do now is that when an opportunity is created and a quote is created, by default, if it is being selected to be created, we want a task to be assigned to the owner. Then, when it's moved to accepted, we are wanting the opportunity to be updated to negotiation review, and we're wanting a custom notification because we could have a different opportunity owner to someone who is creating our quotes. So what we're going to do is we're going to jump over into setup and we're going to go into flows. Now, one thing that we didn't go over last week is essentially the flows screen. So you can see here, I have a number of different flows. The two flows that we'll be looking at tonight are our quote on create flow and our quote flow after save. One item that is relatively new to flows is the Flow Trigger Explorer. What this does is it's a handy little user interface to tell what is going on each of your objects. We can click here and choose an object. So for example, when a quote record is created, I can see my before save. So I have no before save flows. I have an after save. So we have our create flow here and any asynchronously run flows also sit under here. If I was to change this over to updated, we can see my after save quote flow is sitting here and we can see it's inactive. This is really great for you to see what flows are running when on each object. You can see that that shows both inactive and active flows. So now we're going to jump over and we're going to go to our created flow. So here, if we jump back to our product showcase, for generating quotes, we're advising the opportunity owner when a quote is accepted and wanting the opportunity to be moved to negotiation review when the quote is accepted. So over here, I'm just wanting to create a task to be assigned for the generation of our quote. So going into our conditions here, we have that our object is quote. Our trigger for the flow is when a record is created. We don't have any set entry conditions here because we're wanting to run this on every flow. Now, I don't have the ability to actually use a fast field update here. The reason being is that I am creating a record. That needs to happen on an action or related records, so an after save. Fast field we can only use for, pardon me, for when we are making updates within that record itself. Now, we can also set scheduled paths here. A scheduled path allows us to decide when we want this flow path to run. For example, we can set it to be an hour or a day before, an hour after the quote is created. And we can have that particular path, so say 1 day after creation. Always make sure that your labels are descriptive so that if someone else is looking at it, they understand what's going on. So here we've said when the quote is created, 1 day after, I want to run this particular path. If I want to determine a batch size, I can do that here as well. Here we can see that I have another path now, which runs 1 day after creation. Here I can see that all I am doing, I'm just going to remove that path. And we can see here, I just have a create task. If I open up my create task here, I've just used a create node with me defining the values myself. The first being obviously the task object, defining it's the task object. We're setting the activity due. Yep, I can zoom in. Is that better? I can go a little bit further here. Great, fantastic. Apologies for that. So here we have our activity date, which is the due date. So we have a task due date formula. So that formula is very simple. All I have done is I've just created our global variables. So grabbing one of our global variables down here within the flow and using our current date. And then all I've done is +7. So I've +7 days onto this, which means that this task is going to be due 7 days after the creation. The owner ID is the quote record ID. Just bear with me for 1 second. Just wanting to, fantastic. Just had some lines on the screen there. The status for our task will be not started. And the subject, generate the quote document and send to client. And the most important part, the what ID. So we need to be able to link it to our quote. Otherwise, the task is just going to be created and it's not going to actually show up against our quote. It'll be a task that'll be assigned to someone, but won't be related to a record. So it's important to always have the what ID. Now here, you can just click save. I haven't activated this one at the moment because with all flows, we want to make sure that we debug. So we can see here, I have a quote here that I can pick up. A path for our debug run. So if we had the different paths, so the scheduled paths that we just went through, we would be able to select which path. I also can skip the start condition requirements. So if I had conditions within my entry criteria, I would be able to skip over those. So I'm going to click run here. And we can see here that I have this orange line. And this is showing me that it's been successful. If for whatever reason this had not been successful, it would stop here and we would have failed. We can see here how the interview started. We had no entry conditions and the details of the record. Now, with record triggered flows, they are rolled back. Screen flows are not, unless you've determined them as such. So we can see here that the flow completed without any issues. Now, another new feature, and we can see that's in beta up here, so it's still being tested and there will be tweaks to it in the future, is we can create tests. So those are similar to as you would write an Apex test, a test class. Essentially, we can create a test of our function here. So if you had a complex flow, you would be able to create different tests in here. So I'm going to say generic test. It's only been run on created, and our path is just this. We set the initial triggering record. So I can grab this quote here, and it's going to populate the fields in here that I have already populated. It's going to grab this information here, and it's going to use that within our test case. Then I can turn around and say, okay, with our assertions, we can put in different checks to ensure that the values are correct, and then provide different value messages based on that. So for example, if I say task ID is, task ID from create task is empty, I click save there. If I view my tests, I can see my test here, and then I can run that. So we can see we've had a little error there, and that has taken us through to Salesforce customer support. As this is still in beta, there are chances of these particular issues. Once this gets ironed out in the future releases, it will be a very, very powerful tool. Are there any questions in regards to this particular flow here? A very, very simple record triggered flow that previously you would do in Process Builder. But what we can also do here is there are many people out there that would recommend you having one create flow per object, and then creating subflows off here based on different decision criteria. So for example, if I want to run a subflow in here and say auto launch flow lost opportunity, and I want to grab this information here. So for example, I want to grab the record account ID and then the record opportunity ID. And I can see now that I have this in here. So I could actually turn around and put in that the record opportunity stage is equal to closed lost. So for example, I could say here and say connect to element, lost opportunity. Actually, I'm just going to copy element, throw it up here. So what would happen there is it would run through here and run this particular opportunity here. And say if I want to connect to this element here, like that, we could see here that I have a decision and to go through from here. Thank you very much for the kind words. I really enjoy sort of doing this, and really passionate about talking about flows and Salesforce in general. So look, if there's any questions at all, please feel free to jump into the Slack community. It's a great community there. There's a lot of people in there that are just willing to help each other out. And you know, there's always someone in there that can help you and you know, guide you where you should be looking, or you know, help with you know, those pesky little formulas that you have, or you know, little questions that you have. Google is great, but it's always great to you know, talk to people as well.